Hi. It's not recording has started. So my name's Kahryn Hughes. I'm at the University of Leeds and I'm the director of the Timescapes Archive.
And I'm Dr. Anna Tarrant. I'm an associate professor in sociology at the University of Lincoln and also director of a new qualitative longitudinal study called Following Young Fathers Further.
Lovely. And just a little bit of scene setting. This is a warts and all series of conversations between us about our work developing methods of qualitative secondary analysis. This first video is on what we think qualitative secondary analysis is. So what do you think it is, Anna?
So it's a really difficult question to answer, I think, is my honest answer and starting point, and something that you and I have been discussing and debating for nearly 6 years now, since we got involved in this area. I think it's been discussed and debated a lot in social sciences in particular. And the debates have kind of coalesced around a range of different sets of concerns around language, practicalities, and also kind of the ethics of working with qualitative data. But to answer your question, and I think at its most basic, QSA is about reusing qualitative data. So that's either data that somebody was involved in generating themselves with participants and perhaps coming back to it at a much later date and bringing new sets of questions to that data. Or it might be, as I have done, a researcher accessing data that's been generated by a completely different research team, completely different sort of asking completely different sets of questions, but coming to that data, trying to familiarize themselves with that data, and trying to develop analyses and produce knowledge in an area of their interest, based on data that they weren't necessarily involved in producing themselves. And that's the approach that I took, and it's a really privileged thing, I think, to be able to engage with data that you weren't involved in generating. But again, it raises a whole range of different questions around epistemology and sort of questions around researcher relationships, issues that we want to discover and sort of talk through, I suppose, in these recorded sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that you've been focusing on there is that and I think this is actually characteristic of our shared work, is that we have been undertaking the qualitative secondary analysis of data that was produced for research.
Yes.
So it's research data. And I mean, for example, across different disciplines like history and so on and so forth, people have been archaeology, they've been, it's the analysis of existing materials in particular ways to tell particular, to produce particular research accounts. In the social sciences, both of us are sociologists. There is also a history of working with research data in different sorts of ways. And I'm thinking particularly of the work by John Goodwin and Henrietta O'Connor, where they were working with the Young Workers Study, a found data set that was, how many years old was it? Produced in the 60s. I think it was about 45, 50 years old, something like that by the time they found it. The data set had been produced as part of a study between Norbert Elias and John Scottson. And they weren't looking only at the data as it was the research data that was recorded. They were looking at all of what they described as the marginalia, all of the other bits of data around it. So I think with qualitative secondary analysis, I think that's one of the key questions, isn't it? It's like, how do we understand these as these data as data? What sort of data are we describing them as? And how do we understand those data as a form of evidence? It's two parts, I think, of the broader question. So qualitative secondary analysis is the reuse of existing
research data.
Data, commonly research data, as we've
Yeah.
been writing about it.
Yeah.
And the key question that we have to address is, how do we, that's how we start off. How do we understand these data as data, and how do we use them? What sort of evidence? And this relates back to the questions that you started off with. There's lots of questions about it.
Yeah.
So we're going to start answering those questions in our next set of videos, I think.
We are. And I think the question that we get the most is, why do this? Why reuse data that's already out there? And I think that's a really important question for us to address in this first video, because we're trained in primary methods, at university, at undergraduate level, all the way through to postgraduate level, and very often secondary analysis isn't really discussed. It's not really necessarily on the curriculum, and one thing that we're trying to do, I think, through our writing, publications, and through our work, is to bring qualitative data analysis and secondary analysis onto that agenda. I think between us, we've engaged with these questions and grappled with them for many years, because we've really valued what we've done, and we've really benefited from engaging with data. And it's been career changing for me. It's helped to inform, and you, it's helped to inform, my research designs. I've got this, as I said, but I'm really privileged access into these social worlds that I might not necessarily have done or been able to in other ways. And again, particularly in a COVID context where we're required to socially distance, and where primary methods are now, having to change. I think there's a real potential now and real opportunity here to kind of capitalise on the ability to access existing research data.
Absolutely. I think perhaps that's going to be the topic of our next video, which is it worth doing qualitative secondary analysis? What can we do with it?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Okay.